This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric reporting tonight from the Law Library at the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines.
And this is a special Western edition from Des Moines, Iowa. Good evening, everyone. We begin with breaking news. CBS News now estimates that Barack Obama has won the Democratic caucuses with a lot of help from young voters. Obama beat the national frontrunner Hillary Clinton and John Edwards. Meanwhile, on the Republican side, CBS News estimates Mike Huckabee has won. He got a big boost in this state from Christian evangelicals, but a big disappointment for Mitt Romney, who spent a lot of time and money here and is looking to become the first Mormon president. Battling for third, John McCain, Fred Thompson, Rudy Giuliani, and Ron Paul. We have a team of correspondents deployed to bring you every angle of this critically important story. First, Dean Reynolds with the Obama campaign. And Dean, I know this campaign spent a lot of time targeting young voters, and it worked.
It did indeed. In fact, the bet that they made was that they could bring a lot of those young voters, the first-timers, to the polls, along with undecideds and independents, and it would appear that all of that worked masterfully for them. They're now projecting perhaps as many as 200 to 230,000 people attending these caucuses, which would be like 100,000 more than 4 years ago. They're doing 10% better among seniors than they expected to do. They're doing better among those under 30 than they thought they would do. And they're doing better in rural areas, which were of great strength or strongholds for John Edwards. They're doing better than their projections there. And we're getting signs that they're also doing better in the limited African-American precincts in Iowa, which could be very significant further down on the road towards South Carolina, where there is a large African-American voting bloc. Now, one thing I should point out is that the candidate himself watched these returns and is described as inspired by the big turnout, and Katie, I'll bet he is.
And, Dean, when do you expect him to come down and address the crowds there?
Well, I think they're going to wait, obviously, until the other candidates decide to throw in the towel, if you will. There is a slowing of the count connected to the large turnout. There are so many people that it's taking them a while to count everybody, and that may mean that concessions, if there are to be any, would be delayed as well. So we don't expect to see Senator Obama here for quite some time.
All right, Dean Reynolds covering the Obama campaign for us. Dean, thank you. The Obama win tonight is, of course, a major disappointment for Hillary Clinton, long perceived as the inevitable nominee. Many believe she still will be. Jim Axelrod is covering her campaign. Jim, was the Clinton camp surprised at the outcome, or are they expressing surprise, or were expectations significantly lowered before the caucuses began?
Well, Katie, they did try to lower the expectations, but earlier tonight, the Clinton caucus director told me that they, too, were thinking if it got to 200,000 caucus goers or so, bad news for them, good news for Obama, and that appears to be exactly what happened.
Figuring there's nothing to do but wait for results, Hillary Clinton had a relatively quiet day.
I feel great.
If her point, that she's got the best experience to be president, hasn't been made by now, it's too late. But voters also say this election's about change. And despite months of saying that experience is precisely what's needed to produce change, poll after poll indicates Iowa's Democrats see Obama as the better agent of change.
In the last few days, Clinton aides were very careful to say, look, if this is 1, 2, 3-point spread, let's go to New Hampshire and pick it up from there. They were minimizing the importance or significance of a loss as long as the spread was small. And again, that's what they'll be spinning tomorrow. Katie?
Is Hillary Clinton finding any solace that she's following, in a way, in her husband's footsteps in this state?
Well, you know, the problems that the Clinton campaign had from the outset was they did not have the kind of established framework here because Bill Clinton didn't run here in 92. Tom Harkin, of course, was a favorite son, didn't have to do it again in 96. So they had to come in from ground zero with no structure, no established campaign organization, and try to build from the ground up, and they came late. This is another thing the Clintons will say starting tomorrow in terms of trying to put this into some kind of perspective. Katie?
All right, Jim Axelrod. Thanks, Jim. Meanwhile, John Edwards spent years campaigning here in Iowa, and he really needed a good showing tonight. Chip Reed is with the Edwards campaign. Chip, are they feeling somewhat deflated?
Well, I'll tell you, Katie, this room is about empty, and there's really very little sense of enthusiasm or any kind of positive feeling. But I did just talk to one of the top Edwards advisors, and he said that their take on this is that it is a repudiation of Hillary Clinton. They still believe it's going to turn into a race about change, and that this race, this campaign, is going to be, or at least turn into, a battle between Barack Obama and John Edwards. That, though, does depend on Edwards finishing in a strong second place, and that is still very unclear. So I think that is certainly a positive spin on events so far, and a bit of a hopeful look. But they certainly believe in their hearts that Edwards is not out yet, that it's a big victory for Barack Obama. Obviously, he really did get those young independent voters out there, which a lot of people doubted he would be able to do. But on the other hand, they still believe he has a fighting chance here, and fighting is a good word because he's been all about fighting throughout this whole campaign, Katie.
In fact, Chip, some people think he's been too feisty, if you will, that his campaign took on an aggressive, angry tone that turned voters off. Have you talked to any Edwards staffers about that?
I've talked to a lot of people about that over time, and I've talked to a lot of voters about that. And you know, Katie, the truth is here in Iowa, especially kind of in the bubble of the Edwards campaign, among supporters and staffers, they don't see it at all. They believe that this is a fight, an epic fight, as John Edwards calls it, and they believe that. The people around him, supporters and staffers, believe that you have to go back to Washington and fight, fight, fight. The fear all along, privately among Edwards staffers, is does that translate in the rest of the country? Is an argument like that going to work in New Hampshire or in California or New York or Florida? Yeah, it might work here in Iowa, where you've got these prairie populists who have that mood, that kind of anti-what's going on in Washington mood. But is that going to work all across the country? There have been a lot of doubters. So it really depended on him winning or having a very strong second-place finish in Iowa, and that has yet to be seen, Katie.
All right, Chip Reed. Chip, thank you. Meanwhile, what a night for Mike Huckabee. He came from nowhere to win here in Iowa. Nancy Cordes has been covering his campaign. Nancy, what's the latest from there?
Well, Katie, a decisive victory for Mike Huckabee is the best belated Christmas present he could have hoped for, and he got that present in large part from evangelical voters. Take a look at what we've learned from those entrance polls. 60% of caucus goers, Republican caucus goers, identified themselves as born-again or evangelical voters, and they went overwhelmingly for Huckabee, who is, of course, a former Baptist preacher. 45% of them voted for Huckabee and just 19% for Romney. Take a look at something else interesting. Republican caucus goers were asked which quality mattered most to them in a candidate. 43% said values. 33% said what he believes. Now, over the past few weeks, when we spoke to Huckabee supporters at his events, overwhelmingly they said the reason that they supported him was because of his values, pro-life, pro-marriage. Only 14%, on the other hand, said that having the right experience was important. And you'll recall, Katie, that Huckabee has come under fire several times over the past few weeks for perhaps not being as up on foreign policy as he should be. A lot of experience in domestic policy, 10 and a half years as governor of Arkansas, but no foreign policy experience. But only 14% of those Republican caucus goers said that mattered to them. And only 8% said they cared whether the candidate had the best chance to win. That's a question some have asked here in Iowa. If I vote for Mike Huckabee, does he have the chance to go all the way? But only 8% of the caucus goers said that that was important to them. That might be a hint to why he won or is projected to win here in Iowa. Katie?
But Nancy, those so-called gaffes that he's committed in recent weeks about Pakistan or getting confused about the writers' strike, they really didn't seem to impact caucus goers here.
They really didn't, and those negative ads that were run by Mitt Romney over and over again here in this state didn't seem to matter much either. And for the most part, when we spoke to Iowa voters, they said foreign policy wasn't what was on their minds. Those Republican caucus goers said it was values that was most important to them.
All right, Nancy Cordes covering the Huckabee campaign. Nancy, thank you. No one spent more time and money here in Iowa than Republican Mitt Romney. He comes in second, but this race is far from over. In fact, it's just beginning. Bill Whitaker is covering Romney for us. Bill, what's the latest from there?
Well, Katie, we understand that Mitt Romney already has called Governor Huckabee to offer his congratulations. Now, you must understand that Mitt Romney's whole strategy was based on winning big in these early states. A big loss here now makes New Hampshire all the more important.
Hi, how are you?
He hasn't yet folded his tents in Iowa, and already Romney is turning his sights and firepower on the next battle, New Hampshire.
Nice to see you, Will.
Today, launching a missile at chief rival John McCain.
His record in the U.S. Senate leaves a lot to be desired.
He's unleashed a barrage since McCain first tied, then passed him in state polls. Emails to reporters blasting McCain.
He opposed the Bush tax cuts twice.
Ads on the web, on TV.
He even voted to allow illegal immigrants to collect Social Security.
Full of information, political watchdog factcheck.org has called false and misleading.
He's attacking McCain for a bill that he himself once called reasonable.
Romney's hanging tough.
If Senator McCain considers that an attack on him, why, that's kind of unusual because it only describes important issues and what his positions are.
In just the last 2 weeks, Romney has spent about $1 million on ads in New Hampshire going after McCain. Ads that have run roughly 300 times already. Katie?
Bill Whitaker. Thank you, Bill. John McCain is still battling for third here in Iowa tonight. Kelly Kobayea is following the McCain campaign. And Kelly, in a way, Huckabee's strong showing here will only boost McCain in New Hampshire, won't it?
It's really good news for the McCain campaign. They were sort of secretly hoping for this because it takes some of the wind out of the sails of the Mitt Romney camp, and Romney is McCain's chief rival in New Hampshire. A recent poll shows him about 6 points back from McCain, and McCain in the lead in New Hampshire with just about 5 days to go before that primary. McCain came out and spoke to some of his supporters in New Hampshire just a few minutes ago. He said that he called Huckabee and congratulated him on his win in Iowa. He also took a couple of digs at Mitt Romney, really. Said, first of all, that it shows that negative campaigning doesn't work and that you can't buy an election in Iowa.
All right, Kelly Kobayea, thank you for that. And we'll be back with more from Des Moines right after this.